Alright, so we are going to talk about each of these theoretical approaches: neoclassical, substantivism, Marxism, and then moving on to cultural economics. Because the focus of this class is going to be mostly on cultural economics, and I want to get to talking about some of the specific cultural aspects we study in economic anthropology, we're going to move relatively quickly through the other three before we get to cultural economics. The textbook we're using for the online class doesn't really delve into these three quite as much as the face-to-face text, which is why I do want to include it here, because I think it's important. But I don't want it to be the focus necessarily, so we're going to move through pretty quickly through these theoretical approaches. But first is going to be neoclassical economics. Okay, and in 1776, Adam Smith published The Wealth of Nations, where he talked about primitive and civilized societies. And remember the kind of climate of the time, the political climate and the anthropological climate of the time, where we're thinking about ranking societies from primitive to civilized. And so that's where this is kind of existing in that framework. Okay, so in primitive societies, individuals did a lot of different kinds of work. So they were doing bits and pieces of every aspect of society. And then in civilized societies, joint labor is the dominant model. So people are working together and they're dividing up labor. And so this occurred due to the introduction of division of labor. Okay, and that is basically just the cooperative organization of work into specialized tasks and roles. And so instead of having one person, for example, make an entire shoe from start to finish, you would have one person make the sole. You'd have one person make the body of the shoe. You'd have one person make the laces. You've had one person put it together. And so now you have people working in specialized tasks. And so this makes less time, or makes it take less time to make an object. And now an object, instead of being valued based on the time and effort that an individual put into it, it's now based on an exchange rate in a market. And so exchange just being the transfer of objects and services between actors, and the market being the social institution in which people come together to exchange goods or services. Okay, so changing how we created the object actually changed how we valued the object. Okay, so basically, neoclassical economics says that people have unlimited desires in a world with finite resources. Okay, so you want all of these things, but they aren't all doable or accessible or able to be made or created. Okay, so this creates competition for value. Okay, so you have people creating the same things, but then you're fighting for value, which is going to keep prices, production costs, profit, and interest rate low. But it creates a lot of wealth overall in the culture. Okay, and so in this theoretical perspective, we see market as emerging naturally from the human condition. Okay, so it's something that has to happen. It's something that will always happen. It's not a product of culture or of a separate social institution. It is something that occurs naturally in the human condition and will always occur. To counter that, we have capitalism, which suggests that it's basically a system based on private ownership, so where someone owns the means of production, and so that sets prices, and all goods are distributed through the market. So in 1944 we start thinking about capitalism a bit more, and we start thinking that maybe the rise of the market was not actually due to a natural human state, but instead it's a social process that goes hand in hand with the creation of the modern state. Okay, so that capitalism, or the market, was developed in a particular historical and cultural context, not that it's something that has to happen with humans naturally.